This video is about the SQL Server installation and configuration for the Ellipse Power BI Analytical Server. This will cover SQL Server installation, SQL Server management tools, database configuration, and service account configuration. We will now discuss the SQL Server installation. To start the installation of SQL Server 2016, click the Installation tab and select the top item to install a standalone installation. We will now step through each installation page for the installation of SQL Server. On the product key page, you will need to enter the product key for your version of SQL Server. On the license terms page, you will need to accept the license term agreement. On the Microsoft Update page, check this option so that patches are applied. During the next two pages, Product Updates and Install Setup Files, it is possible that some patches and other items are downloaded during the installation process. These two steps will be skipped during this demonstration due to time constraints. However, during these two steps, just accept the defaults until you get to the Install Rules page. On the Install Rules page, just ensure that no errors are displayed in this list. If this is the case, just proceed to the Feature Selection page. On the Feature Selection page, ensure that these items are selected: Database Engine Services, Analysis Services, Reporting Services Native, Client Connectivity Tools, Integration Services. Then proceed to the next page. On the Instance Configuration page, you will configure the SQL Server instance. It is recommended that you use the default instance option. On the Server Configuration page, select Grant Perform Volume Maintenance Task. Then accept the default service accounts. Then proceed to the next page. On the Database Engine Configuration page, select either Windows Authentication Mode or the Mix Mode. If the Mix Mode is selected, you will need to enter a password. You will also need to add the current user, so this user has access to the SQL Server by default. Then proceed to the next page. On the Analyst Service Configuration page, select Tabular Mode and add the current user. Then proceed to the next page. On this page, accept the defaults and proceed to the next page. On the Ready to Install page will be a summary of all the installation actions that will take place now. Click on the Install button to start the installation of SQL Server. On the Complete page, you just need to make sure that all the installation steps completed successful. If this is the case, the installation has been completed. You can now close the installation window. After the SQL Server has been installed, it is required to install the SQL Server management tools so that the SQL Server can be managed from this machine. To install the SQL Server management tools, you need to go to this web address. From there, you will be able to download the most recent version of the SQL Server Management Studio. Once this is completed downloading, we can then proceed to installing it. I've now downloaded the install resources and will begin the installation. This is a simple installation and no options are required to be entered. When the installation is complete, you will see a screen like this. We will now restart the PC to complete the installation and perform some basic tests to make sure that both the SQL Server and the SQL management tools are working correctly. Now that we have installed SQL Server and the management tools, we should be able to test that we can make a connection to both the database engine and the Analyst Services engine. We will first connect to the database engine. We can use the name of the machine, an IP address, or even localhost. Next, we'll connect to Analyst services. Now we have made connection to both services. This completes the installation and testing of the management tools. The next stage of the configuration is to set up the database for the Datamart star schemas and its data. We will also configure the SSIS DB database to hold the SSIS packages and their configuration settings. We will now create a database for the star schemas. We should enter Datamart in here. We also need to set the initial size of the database. This should have already been calculated using the Ellipse Analytical sizing tool that is provided. A separate video exists that explains this process. The log file should be 1/10 of the size of the database. The data files for the database can be moved to another drive if required. These are the only options that need to be set at this point. You will notice that the Datamart database has just been created. We will now create the SSIS DB database. This is required for the SSIS system to function. You need to enable CLR integration, accept the defaults, and enter a password. This password needs to be remembered as it is required to be used if you are backing up or restoring the database. Accept the defaults and click OK. You will notice that we now have the database created. On some operating systems that SQL Server can be installed on, there is one additional step that needs to be done. This is to use the SQL Server 2016 Configuration Manager. You need to ensure that the protocols for Microsoft SQL Server has the name pipes and TCP/IP items enabled. Without this, some types of connections will not be able to be established with the SQL Server. This now completes the database configuration. We will now configure the server's accounts. If the online Power BI portal is going to be used, the account for the SaaS service will need to use a domain account that also has local admin rights. It will also require to have access to the Windows Authorization Access group on the domain controller. To change this account, select the SQL Server Analyst Services service, and then change the login account to the required domain account. Then restart the Analyst Services. The SaaS service will also require read access to the Datamart database. This SQL login needs to use the same account as used by the SQL Server Analyst Services. You need to open SSMS and create a new login. You also need to do some user mapping to make sure it has the required access to the Datamart database. You'll need to give it the data reader role. That account now has the required access. It would also be possible to create this account in a way that just has general DBO access to this server. To do this, we need to create the account like this. Then we go to Server Roles, and give it sysadmin. This account will now have access to all databases on this server. This completes the SQL Server Installation configuration for the Ellipse Analytical system. To continue the installation, these additional steps will need to be done. Install the Ellipse Analytical components, install and configure the Power BI gateway, upload and configure the Power BI resources. This will include reports, dashboards, and user access. Thank you.